My husband's sister left us to drown. 8 months ago, the world went dark in a screech of twisted metal. One moment, David and I were driving home from a rare, precious dinner alone, the taste of wine and freedom still on our lips. The next, a blinding impact, the shattering of glass, and then nothing but pain and the sterile, suffocating smell of a hospital room. I woke up disoriented, my body screaming, my mind a frantic mess. My first conscious thought wasn't for my broken ribs or the pounding in my head. It was for our children. Lily, only 5, and little Noah, just 2. Who had them? Were they safe? Our kind next-door neighbor, Mrs. Gable, had been watching them that night. She was a godsend, a sweet, elderly woman who had insisted we take an evening for ourselves. But Mrs. Gable was in her 70s. She couldn't manage 2 young children for more than a few hours, let alone indefinitely. The doctor's prognosis was a sledgehammer to my already fragile state. I had multiple fractures and would be largely immobile for weeks. David had a severe spinal injury. It would be at least 3 months before he could even think about returning to work, let alone helping with the chaotic, beautiful demands of our kids. Panic, cold and sharp, seized me. My own parents were across the country, my father too frail to travel. David's parents, while wonderful, lived an hour away, and his father had his own mobility issues. They couldn't handle the daily grind of a toddler and a kindergartner. That's when I thought of his sister, Rebecca. She lived barely 20 minutes from us in a pristine, quiet apartment. She had always been vocally, almost militantly, child-free. But this was different. This wasn't a casual request for a Friday night. This was a catastrophe. David was hesitant. "Becky, she's not really the nurturing type, Jen," he mumbled from his hospital bed, his voice thick with pain and medication. "Her life is her own." I didn't have the energy for nuance. "She's family," I insisted, my voice cracking. "This is what family does." When we called her, her response felt like a physical blow. She listened, and with a calm that was utterly chilling, she said she couldn't disrupt her routine or compromise her boundaries. She had chosen a life without children, she explained, as if we were slow to understand a simple concept, and she couldn't be expected to alter that because of our unfortunate situation. Her tone was so casual, so dismissive. It was as if we were asking her to water our plants, not save our family from collapsing. I was speechless. David tried again, his voice strained. "Rebecca, please. It's not forever. Just until we can get back on our feet. We have no one else." Her reply was firm, final. "It's not my responsibility to alter my life for your choices. I'm sorry you're in this position, but I have to prioritize my own peace." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Rebecca worked a flexible, part-time job as a freelance graphic designer. Her social media was a curated gallery of yoga classes, artisanal coffee, and solo trips to art galleries. How could someone be so utterly self-absorbed? There was no apology in her voice, no empathy, just a cold, unwavering commitment to her own comfort. In the end, it was Mrs. Gable, our elderly neighbor, who became our guardian angel. She couldn't do it all, but she mobilized our entire street. A network of near strangers, parents from Lily's school, a young couple from down the block, even a retired postman, formed a rotating schedule. They brought casseroles, drove David to his physical therapy, took Noah to park, and helped Lily with her homework. Their overwhelming kindness brought me to my knees with gratitude, but also carved a deep, festering wound of resentment towards Rebecca. Strangers had more compassion for us than my own sister-in-law. I tried reaching out to my mother-in-law, hoping she could reason with her daughter or at least help more herself, but she only visited the hospital once, fussing over David for an hour before leaving, citing the long drive. The subsequent weeks were a blur of pain, fear, and exhaustion, juggling my own recovery with managing a household from a bed, was a Herculean task. David was trapped in his own world of pain and frustration. Every time I thought of Rebecca, a fresh wave of anger would wash over me. She hadn't called. She hadn't texted. It was as if we had ceased to exist. The rift she created wasn't just between her and me. It seeped into my marriage. David didn't defend her, not exactly. But his refusal to condemn her felt like a betrayal. "That's just how she is, Jen," he'd say, his voice weary. "She's always been like this." As if that was an excuse, a get-out-of-jail-free card for monstrous behavior. I wanted him to be as outraged as I was, to call her and tell her exactly what kind of person she was. But he remained neutral, a silent, conflicted island in the middle of our marital storm. We stopped saying her name, but her ghost was in every room. Months passed. Our bones healed. David slowly graduated from a wheelchair to a walker, then to a cane. Life mechanically returned to a semblance of normalcy. But emotionally, I was a raw nerve. Seeing Rebecca's life continue uninterrupted on social media. Pictures of her at wineries, her perfect brunches, her serene yoga poses. Felt like a personal insult. She hadn't just refused to help. She had moved on without a single backward glance, completely unscathed, while our lives had been torn apart. The principle of it was what hurt the most. An emergency reveals the true character of the people around you, and Rebecca had shown me a desolate, selfish wasteland. I made a decision. She was not welcome back into our lives. Not after this. She had drawn a line in the sand with her indifference, and I intended to respect it. I didn't care if David thought I was being stubborn or if his family thought I was cold. She had forfeited her rights. So, when my phone lit up with her name 8 months later, I stared at it as if it were a venomous snake. She hadn't contacted us once. Not a call, not a text. Curiosity, bitter and cynical, made me answer. She didn't bother with hello. "Jen, I have the most exciting news," she chirped, her voice artificially bright. She was dating someone new, a man named Daniel. And Daniel, she emphasized, was a true family man. He came from a big, close-knit clan, and it was apparently very important to her to show him she could be a fun, involved aunt. She asked, as casually as if she were asking for the time, if she could come over that afternoon to spend time with the kids, or if I could perhaps drop them off at her place for a few hours. The audacity was so staggering, it stole my breath. 8 months of silence. 8 months of us struggling, rebuilding, surviving. And now she wanted to use my children as props to audition for the role of perfect girlfriend. I found my voice cold and sharp. "Why do you think this is appropriate, Rebecca?" She laughed, a light, tinkling sound that grated on my every nerve. "Oh, don't be so dramatic, Jen. I just want to bond with my niece and nephew. I tried to let you bond with them when it actually mattered." I said, my voice low and steady. "I begged you. Do you remember that? Do you remember telling us your peace was more important than helping your brother when he couldn't walk?" Her tone shifted instantly, becoming defensive and sharp. "I can't believe you're still holding a grudge over that. It's in the past. Everyone has boundaries, Jen. It wasn't fair of you to expect me to abandon mine just because you had an emergency. I'm not anti-family. I just need to protect my lifestyle choices." A bitter, hollow laugh escaped me. Protect your lifestyle? This wasn't about lifestyle. Rebecca, it was about basic human decency. Your refusal to help wasn't a boundary. It was sheer, unadulterated selfishness. Emergencies don't respect boundaries, and real family shows up when it counts. She snapped back, "I don't owe you anything. You're just trying to guilt-trip me for living my life." Then she tried to soften her approach, a transparent pivot. "Look, I really want to make up for the past. I want to show Daniel what a great aunt I can be." That was the final straw. My children are not accessory for you to use to impress your boyfriend. I said, my words clear and precise. If you think you can waltz back into their lives without a single ounce of genuine remorse or accountability, you are delusional. I'm not interested in your performative, self-serving attempts at playing house. She called me petty and vindictive, accusing me of denying her children a relationship with their aunt. That relationship wasn't mine to deny. I fired back. It was yours to ruin, and you did a spectacular job. I hung up, my hands trembling with a potent mix of fury and validation. But she wasn't done. 2 weeks later, she showed up at our doorstep with Daniel in tow. I was out grocery shopping, and David, to my utter dismay, let them in. When I returned, they were seated in our living room, Rebecca cooing over Noah while Lily watched from a distance with a wary expression. Jen, Rebecca beamed, as if we were the best of friends. We were just in the neighborhood and thought we'd surprise you. I was telling Daniel how much I'd love to take the kids to the new playground by the river. Daniel, a pleasant-looking man with a nervous smile, nodded. It's really wonderful that Rebecca wants to be more involved with the family. I turned to David. Why didn't you tell me we were expecting guests? He shrugged, avoiding my eyes. I didn't think it would be a big deal. I looked directly at Rebecca. Showing up uninvited isn't the way to do this. Your sudden interest isn't welcome. It's transparent. Rebecca, you're not doing this for them. You're doing it for him. I gestured toward Daniel. Rebecca's smile tightened. I'm trying to make an effort. Jen, you're making it impossible. Daniel stepped in. Family relationships can be complicated, but they're worth saving, don't you think? Does he even know what happened, Rebecca? I asked, my gaze locked on her. I didn't wait for an answer. I turned to Daniel. 8 months ago, David and I were hit by a drunk driver. I was bedridden. He couldn't walk. We had no one to care for our children. We called Rebecca, begging for help. She told us her child-free lifestyle choices were more important than helping her own family in a life-and-death situation. How would you feel if someone did that to you, and then showed up months later wanting to play happy families because it looked good on paper? Daniel's face went blank with surprise. He looked at Rebecca, then back at me, and didn't have an answer. Rebecca's face flushed a deep red. You are so unreasonable. You're blowing everything out of proportion. You need to let go of the past. Letting go isn't the issue, I said, my voice rising. Trust is. You've shown you can't be relied on, and I will not let you disappoint my children the way you disappointed us. Forgiveness requires effort and accountability. Showing up unannounced with your pro-family boyfriend, isn't it? She resorted to guilt. You're being cruel. Deny me this chance. Cruelty was what you did when you turned your back on us. I said, my voice shaking with emotion. If you want forgiveness, you need to earn it. This isn't earning it. She stormed out, dragging a stunned Daniel behind her. David sat on the couch, looking utterly conflicted. You were too harsh, he said quietly. Maybe we should give her a chance to make things right. I'm not against reconciliation, I said, exhaustion washing over me, but it has to be genuine. This isn't genuine. She's here to impress Daniel, not to mend our family. I won't let her manipulate us. The tension in our house was palpable for days. David didn't mention her again, but I could feel his disapproval. I held my ground. A few weeks of quiet passed, and then a text arrived from Rebecca. It was stilted and formal, as if drafted by a committee. She claimed she'd been doing some soul-searching and realized she may have handled things poorly. She admitted she let us down during the accident and wanted to make amends. She even offered to babysit. It was a tempting olive branch, but the timing was too convenient, coming right after a public humiliation. The skeptic in me saw it for what it was, another strategic move. I showed David the message. Maybe you should take her up on it, he suggested. Holding on to resentment hurts us more than it hurts her. I thought about it for a long time. I didn't want to be the grudge holder, but I refused to be a fool. I texted her back, stating that if she was serious, she needed to properly acknowledge the pain and hardship she caused, not just with vague text, but with a real conversation. I told her I wasn't interested in empty gestures, and that letting the kids stay with her was off the table for the foreseeable future. Her response was swift and defensive. She said her text was the acknowledgement, and it wasn't fair of me to keep bringing up the past. She was trying her best, and I was making it harder. The conversation died there. I knew with cold certainty that she didn't get it. She wanted a checkbox ticked, not a relationship rebuilt. Of course, that wasn't the end. About a week later, we were at the local park. The kids were on the swings, David was pushing Noah, and I was watching from a bench. Then I saw them. Rebecca, dressed in an impossibly white, expensive-looking linen outfit, and Daniel, looking uncomfortable behind his sunglasses. She descended upon us with theatrical warmth. "What a wonderful coincidence," she trilled, bending down to try and hug a recoiling Lily. "We just had the most delightful brunch and thought we'd find you here. David mentioned you come here on Saturdays." She shot a look at my husband, who had the decency to look ashamed. Daniel smiled weakly. "It's nice to see you all." I didn't return the smile. "Why didn't you call Rebecca?" She waved a dismissive hand. "Oh, I didn't think it was a big deal. I just wanted to see the kids." "It is a big deal," I said, my voice cold. "You can't just force your way back in. You need to respect our boundaries." Her cheerful mask slipped. "I don't understand why you're being so difficult. I'm trying everything I can." Daniel, ever the peacemaker, said, "I really think you should give her a chance to prove herself." That was it. I lost my composure. Actions speak louder than words. "Rebecca, your actions have shown you care more about your image than our family. You ignored us for months when we were at our most vulnerable, and now you want to play end of the year because it fits the narrative you're selling to him." I turned to Daniel, my anger giving me a terrifying clarity. "Is this the kind of woman you want? Someone who abandons her family in a crisis and then pretends it never happened to look good for you?" Rebecca's face was a mask of fury. "You are so bitter and unforgiving. You're holding me to an impossible standard. You're setting a terrible example for the children with this negativity." That was the final, unforgivable line. "My only responsibility is to protect my children from people who are not trustworthy," I said, my voice low and deadly serious. "And right now that includes you. You have no right to lecture me about examples. You've shown your priorities, and they begin and end with your own comfort." Daniel looked like he wanted the earth to swallow him whole. Rebecca was sputtering, accusing me of alienating her from the family. I told her she'd alienated herself. She stormed off once more, a fuming spectacle in white linen, with a deeply embarrassed Daniel trailing in her wake. My husband was silent the entire walk home. The silence between us was heavier than any argument. That evening it broke. His mother called. I could hear her shrill voice through the receiver. She was berating him about why I was causing so much tension, why I couldn't just forgive and forget, that Rebecca was trying so hard. David was patient, explaining our side, but she wasn't listening. I'd had enough. I took the phone. "You need to stop enabling her," I said, my voice shaking with rage. "Where were you when we needed help? Where was your family is family speech when your daughter was refusing to answer our calls? Forgiveness doesn't mean rug sweeping. It means accountability, which none of you are interested in." I hung up before she could reply. David looked at me, weary. "She just doesn't understand why we can't move on. She thinks you're taking it too personally." "Taking it too personally?" I repeated, the words tasting like ash David, she left us to drown. How much more personal does it get? He sighed, that infuriatingly diplomatic sound. Jen, can't we just meet her halfway? For the sake of family peace. Something in me shattered. All the months of pain, of carrying the weight alone, of his passive neutrality, came crashing down. Why can't you see what she's doing? Why can't you stand up for us, for me, for your children, just once? Why is it always me fighting this battle while you tiptoe around their feelings? I'm trying to keep the peace, he insisted, his own frustration rising. It's not as simple as taking sides. Keep the peace? I laughed, a harsh, broken sound. You can shove your peacemaking right up your ass, David. Your diplomacy is just a fancy word for letting your wife and kids get trampled so you don't have to feel uncomfortable. If you want to keep pandering to them, you can do it alone. I'm done. He stared at me, his eyes wide. What is that supposed to mean? It means if you don't start backing me up, there will be consequences. I am not fighting this war by myself anymore. I am not your family's scapegoat. Family conflicts are never black and white, Jen. You can't just issue ultimatums. This isn't an ultimatum, it's a fact. I yelled, your sister disrespected us, abandoned us, and is now trying to manipulate us. And you're worried about rocking the boat? How can you be so blind? How would you feel if she took the kids to the park to impress her boyfriend and wasn't watching them, and something happened? Would that finally be black and white enough for you? He was silent, utterly stunned. The image I'd painted finally seemed to penetrate the fog of his familial loyalty. I'm done talking, I said, my energy spent. If you want to save this marriage, you need to prove that we, your wife and your children, matter more than your family's fragile egos. I walked out of the room and sat on the stairs, my head in my hands, trembling from the adrenaline and the heartbreak. A few minutes later, he came and sat beside me. The fight had gone out of him. You're right, he said, his voice thick with emotion. I've been hiding, using keeping the peace as a shield to avoid confronting them. It was easier to let you be the bad guy. He admitted it was selfish, that he'd taken advantage of my strength, knowing I would always stand up for our family. I saw how lonely it was for you, he said, his voice cracking, and I did nothing. I haven't been a good partner. I'm sorry. His apology was a bomb and a fresh wound all at once. Why did it take you so long? I whispered. He had no good answer, only fears of rocking the boat. He said he'd been so focused on the illusion of family harmony that he was sacrificing what was real, our trust, our partnership. Your family's behavior is one thing, I told him, tears finally spilling over. But your silence felt like a betrayal. I can handle their judgment. I can't handle feeling alone in my own marriage. He reached for my hand. I understand, and I promise I will do better. I will stand with you. From now on, it's us against the problem, not you against them. I looked into his eyes and saw the sincerity I had been desperate for. Actions, David, not words. He nodded. Actions. The tension didn't vanish, but a path forward appeared. A few days later, an invitation for a family reconciliation dinner at his parents' house arrived. It was dripping with fake cheer. I didn't even bother to respond. David looked at it, then at me. I'll tell them we're not coming, he said. It's not worth it. He did, and he handled the subsequent, inevitable phone call from his mother himself, firmly and finally. He didn't pass the phone to me. He stood his ground. As for Rebecca, the final update came indirectly, through the social media grapevine. Daniel, the family man, broke up with her about a month later. It seemed he had finally seen through the carefully constructed facade to the selfish core beneath. The performance was over, and the audience had left. We never heard from her again. The silence this time was a relief. We focused on our family, on rebuilding the trust between us, and on the people who had truly shown up for us, our kind neighbors, our true friends. The nightmare was finally, truly over